Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. It's Wednesday, which means it's time to look at some weapons. So welcome back to the Armory, where all weapons from Halo lore will be featured and analysed in detail, and today we look at the unassuming Boltshot. Let's begin. The Z110 Boltshot is a Forerunner-directed energy pistol, renowned for its versatility and effectiveness in close quarters combat. Developed by the Forerunners, it has been utilised by various factions, including Promethean forces and human soldiers. The close-range particle dilator, known as the Boltshot, was explicitly created to neutralise organic life forms. This weapon's design was abandoned in earlier conflicts, but reviewed by war architects during the height of the Flood Wars. The Boltshot was extraordinarily effective when used against Flood supercells, the material which comprises Flood tissue. Due to its size, the Boltshot is relatively unassuming, but the weapon was capable of releasing an overloaded dispersal of ionized particles which deliberately overpenetrate, punching a hole through a living creature and even into a second target behind it. Well-timed blasts could eviscerate a seething wave of Flood infection forms, or even bore through the hide membrane of the parasite's fetid labyrinth. The Boltshot measures a very conservative 54.1 centimeters or 21.3 inches in length, 9.4 centimeters or 3.7 inches in width, and 31.8 centimeters or 12.5 inches in height. It's probably worth amending there that it's conservative by Forerunner standards, bearing in mind that this weapon was utilised by Forerunner warrior servants, particularly the Prometheans, and later the Promethean Knights, beings that are starkly larger than the average human. The weapon overall possesses an angular design and a metallic-looking casing. It isn't actually truly metallic. It appears to be held together almost entirely by energy fields, as indicated by its self-assembly process and reloading mechanics. There are orange highlights that can be seen while the weapon itself is assembling, and throughout the casing once the assembly is complete. And these highlights grow brighter when the weapon is fired. The weapon itself converts the energy source that is loaded into the weapon in similar fashion to a conventional magazine into ionized particle packets, fabricating them within the mechanisms of the weapon for accelerated discharge at the muzzle. The very description of the weapon being a particle dilator reinforces this assumption. When the weapon's trigger mechanism is held rather than just squeezed to fire a round, although it is also worth noting that the trigger isn't immediately obvious on the weapon, 4 flaps extend from the side of the weapon, activating its burst function. The burst function actually fires 5 rounds simultaneously. Given that the muzzle of the weapon only really has room for a single round, it is hypothetically possible that the flaps that deploy are actually ionized particle emitters, or, at the very least, energy conduits that allow the ionized particle packets to be guided along and then ejected on an adjacent trajectory to the primary shot. This is hypothesized based on the glow emanating from these flaps that grows brighter as the weapon generates energy for its burst function, building to a flash of equal brilliance to the muzzle flash itself, and then retract after the bolt has been released. The Boltshot's ammunition comes in the form of packets of ionized particles. The weapon magazine does not in fact contain these projectiles, but is more akin to a battery pack, being an energy cell that is loaded into the weapon in its loading configuration and ejected from the weapon when expended. The weapon itself converts this energy into ionized particles, likely utilizing electromagnetic radiation to add an unstable quantity of electrons to the particles in question. Upon impact of these projectiles on a target, the packet will dissolve and the payload of ionized particles will be dumped violently into the target, causing a cascade of ionization as the electrons dislodge from the payload and interact with the atoms of the target. Now, based upon the rapid and very violent disintegration of matter upon impact, it is at least hypothetically possible that the ammo is in fact ionized antiparticles, being the opposite charge of normal matter. In this circumstance, the interaction of the projectiles and the target would be akin to a matter-antimatter annihilation. the projectile's antiparticles would pair up with an equal number of particles on the target and annihilate with 100% efficiency, converting directly from matter to energy. This on its own would severely wound the target with even a single shot, but it would also cause long-term radiological effects, including radiation sickness and the distinct possibility of a lethal dose of radiation, assuming the target isn't hit with multiple subsequent rounds. When matter and antimatter annihilate, they release energy in the form of gamma radiation. In the event the target is hit with enough rounds to be fatal immediately, the cascade of matter-antimatter annihilations and the release of ions would effectively cause a rapidly cascading fissioning reaction, dissolving the entirety of the target to nothing but energy. This could in and of itself mean that being too close to the target in question could also see the individual taking on radiation from that fissioning reaction. But again, this is based wholeheartedly on the physics of the operation of this weapon and not necessarily on the law. I do in fact have some calculations in the pipework that I used to inform this video about the quantity of radiation that would be released with a shot like this, and looking more deeply into the physics. If you'd be interested in seeing that, pop a comment down below and I'll make a video dedicated to analysing the lethal radiological effects of using hard light ionized particles and antiparticles as a projectile. The Boltshot does have two simple variants: the closed fist, which is an improved Boltshot with a faster fire rate and approximately a 50% larger magazine, and the open hand, which is an advanced variant that fires a swarm of fast moving homing bolts, both patterns having their own unique use cases, particularly in the Foreigner Flood War. The advantages of the Boltshot based on the law is a very high rate of fire and a relatively decent accuracy over distance. It is capable of headshots in its primary fire mode, and its secondary fire mode can instantly kill shielded enemies at close range, in similar fashion to a very powerful shotgun blast. The disadvantages, however, are noteworthy. It has a limited magazine size that may require frequent reloading, particularly when using the secondary burst fire mode, as that mode consumes 5 projectiles worth of energy, meaning there are only 2 of those burst shots capable per energy cell. It's also worth bearing in mind that charging the burst fire leaves the user vulnerable during that charge time and for a short time afterwards while the weapon cools down. The Boltshot is a weapon that came into use by the Foreigners in a very archaic time in their history, but was brought back for utilisation within the Foreigner Flood War to great effect. The weapon's change of secondary fire characteristics between a single burst and a 3-round burst that track enemies between Halo 4 and Halo 5 have not really been explained from a canonical standpoint, so thus we have to accept that that was done for gameplay purposes, although we could infer some lore in that it's just simply a different pattern of the weapon. The Boltshot's adaptability and lethal potential have made it a favoured sidearm amongst various factions, reflecting the advanced technology of the Forerunners. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future content, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel out significantly. Feel free to pop a comment below on anything you'd like me to cover next, and before signing off I just want to give a shout to my Patreon supporters: Spartan10148, my singular contender class ancilla; Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, the metarchs of my facility; Sylphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029 and Chris Allen, my dutiful monitors; Darian, Legion, Labrat, Spartan137, Chris, Element Zero, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's Personal Devil, Scion Esports, and Saber, my diligent sub-monitors, my dominating fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who continue to support the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. Big props to my Tier 0 YouTube members: Spartan137, Talia, Fenrir, Bornstella, and Jimbo, and all other YouTube members keeping the installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. And if you really love what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel via the links in the description. Much love, take it easy, and find peace in the domain.